What if I told you that the most terrifying threat to the Russian war machine isn't a stealth fighter, a hypersonic missile, or even NATO? What if I told you that Russia's greatest fear on the battlefield is something no larger than a loaf of bread, costs less than a smartphone, and is controlled by a teenager from a garage? Welcome to the new era of warfare, where first-person view, FPV, drones have become the stuff of nightmares, not for generals in polished rooms, but for every soldier in a trench who suddenly hears the sinister hum of an approaching ghost. This is the war story no one expected, but the one rewriting military history in real time. We'll dive deep into the unforgiving trenches of Ukraine, where a silent revolution is taking place. We'll follow the adrenaline-pumping tales of drone pilots navigating death with joysticks, uncover secret factories fueling the front lines, and witness how a budget drone has turned one of the world's most powerful armies into sitting ducks. This is more than a technological marvel, it's psychological warfare at its finest. Prepare to be stunned, because what you thought you knew about modern warfare is about to be shattered. The drone was barely audible, a low-pitched buzz, indistinguishable from the breeze to most ears. But to Russian soldiers dug into the muddy trenches of Donetsk, that sound might as well have been a death sentence. In the early days of the Ukraine conflict, drones were mostly used for reconnaissance eyes in the sky, feeding data back to command posts. But as the war dragged on, something began to change. Ukrainian engineers, hobbyists, and even teenagers began modifying commercial drones, strapping grenades, rigging explosives, mounting cameras, and then came the real game changer, FPV systems. With a pair of goggles and a controller, operators could fly these drones as if they were on board themselves, zipping through windows, diving into tanks, and detonating with surgical precision. Suddenly, trenches were no longer safe. No angle was too tight, no hideout too remote. The battlefield had become a hunting ground, and every Russian position was prey. Who were these drone pilots? Not military veterans, not elite tacticians. They were students, mechanics, and coders. Many operated from makeshift labs, 3D printing parts, hacking firmware, and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They called themselves the Garage Generals. In one basement in Kyiv, a 21-year-old engineering student named Oleg had turned his gaming setup into a drone command center. With a backpack full of lithium batteries and a soldering iron in hand, he'd launch quadcopters fitted with homemade warheads. His targets? Russian convoys, bunkers, and even command vehicles. Russian commanders were stunned. These weren't NATO-grade drones with million-dollar price tags. These were DIY weapons of destruction, costing less than a few $100s. But they were precise, relentless, and worst of all, there were thousands of them. What does fear smell like in a war zone? For Russian troops, it's the smell of sweat-soaked uniforms, diesel, and scorched earth, punctuated by the high-pitched whine of incoming drones. Russian soldiers began abandoning their positions not under artillery fire, but under drone attack. FPV drones were flying into tank hatches, blowing up supply trucks, and targeting individual troops. There were reports of entire units refusing to move during daylight, fearing the ever-present drone eyes overhead. Psychological warfare had taken root. Even when drones weren't attacking, their threat loomed like a predator in the sky. Every shadow, every buzz, every flicker of movement became a trigger. Russia's military doctrine, forged in the fires of World War II and refined through Cold War paranoia, had prepared for large-scale, conventional conflict. What it hadn't prepared for was a digital insurgency armed with micro-aircraft. The Kremlin had invested billions in tanks, jets, and missiles, but they underestimated innovation. They didn't anticipate that a decentralized, tech-savvy resistance could outmaneuver them with drones that were nearly invisible to radar and cost less than a meal at a Moscow cafe. The shockwaves hit hard. Russian electronic warfare systems scrambled to catch up. But FPV drones were too nimble, too low-tech to jam effectively. They slipped through the cracks, quite literally flying through window panes and under power lines. Somewhere near Lviv, hidden in an abandoned warehouse cloaked in camouflage netting, a drone factory operates 24/7. There are no official records, no government seals, just solder fumes, humming printers, and volunteers working in shifts. This is Ukraine's hidden industrial revolution, a decentralized network of makers, hackers, and tinkerers churning out thousands of combat-ready FPV drones. They share blueprints over Telegram, fundraise via social media, and test designs on the front lines. Each drone is a lesson, each strike a data point, and every successful mission is a slap in the face of Russian military pride. It happened near Bakhmut. A Russian armored column was moving under heavy cover, flanked by infantry and shielded by electronic warfare trucks. But the FPV swarm came anyway. 40 drones, moving like a coordinated school of birds, descended with terrifying precision. Operators in Kyiv, Kharkiv, and elsewhere watched the feeds in real time, guiding their drones into weak points, engine blocks, turrets, fuel tanks. Within minutes, the entire column was in flames. Russian radio chatter was pure chaos. Commanders screamed for air support, but it was too late. The drones had come and gone, leaving behind a trail of black smoke and broken steel. It was a massacre, and it was broadcast live to the world. Not all FPV pilots were anonymous. Some had become legends, ghosts with call signs like Falcon, Spectre, and Iron Fox. They had dozens of confirmed hits, sometimes more than frontline snipers. One pilot, known only as Vortex, had taken out 6 tanks in 1 week. His strategy? Hit the tracks, disable movement, then return with a second drone to finish the job. He flew with eerie calm, even when under counter-drone fire. His signature move? Flying upside down just before impact, a psychological taunt to his enemies. Ukrainian commanders began treating drone pilots like special forces. They received real-time intel, custom-built drones, and even psychological training to deal with the mental toll of remote warfare. Russia hit back with jammers, EMP bursts, and signal scramblers. In some areas, drone effectiveness dropped. But the Ukrainians adapted fast, developing anti-jam protocols, frequency hopping, and autonomous flight patterns. The battle wasn't just in the skies. It was in code, signals, and electromagnetic waves. Every new Russian countermeasure spawned a Ukrainian countermeasure. It was a technological arms race, unfolding in real time. And the FPV drones kept coming. In the spring of 2025, Ukraine launched a counteroffensive unlike any before. Thousands of FPV drones led the charge, ahead of troops in armor. They mapped terrain, destroyed artillery nests, and sowed confusion among Russian lines. Russian logistics collapsed under the constant harassment. Bridges were downed by kamikaze drones. Ammunition depots vanished in fireballs. Morale plummeted. One captured Russian officer said it best, "We never saw them coming." It was like fighting ghosts. The war isn't over, and the drone threat hasn't peaked. But one thing is clear: FPV drones have changed warfare forever. They've made trillion-dollar militaries vulnerable to the will of citizen soldiers with a soldering iron and a dream. Russia now lives in fear not of invasion, but of humiliation. Every buzz in the sky is a reminder: the battlefield belongs not to the biggest, but to the smartest. In this new age of war, the most dangerous weapon isn't what you expect. It's the one you never see coming until it's too late. And it's coming again.